very much for that. Let's hope to uh, have this session going. So if I could direct you to the online teaching and learning uh, document, I'll share the link with you here. Be in the conversation pane. Okay, so okay, so how do I enable this view, or this what this is what we call together mode. So actually, I will share you the screen that I have so you can see it. Show the this is enabled. Okay, all right. So if you go to your can you see the screen now with everybody on the seats? Okay. So what you do is on the top right hand corner here in the new Microsoft Teams layout. Uh, of course, you know that there is this show participants. Okay, so these are the names of participants joining in, and then you have the conversation pane. You have the raise your hand. So if you want to ask questions, you just click on that one. You can raise your hand, or you can lower your hand down, or you can do it physically, like what our friend did just now. And to have this layout, you click on the three dots icon, more action, and then you can enable this together mode. So the together mode is how the you enable the session, or enable the view that we have. We also have this large gallery mode where you see something like Zoom, which now I find that's already boring because we have um, this new mode, which is much cooler, I think. Okay, so that's how you do the different modes, and then of course with this one you don't have to apply background text because everybody is just showing their faces. Okay, so let's go back to our work that we're going to have. Okay, Prof. Samin says she don't seem to have the together mode. I don't know. Maybe you are in a different account or a different license for that. But we can. I think we can check that. Okay, so let's get on to the teaching and learning uh, code guideline. Okay, so I've given you this link to the edX website, which will show you the teaching online books and other resources. So the resources that we are trying to find is this one, which is online teaching and learning guideline, which I'm going to share with you and talk about in a bit. Okay, so we have 1 hour, so until 5 o'clock. So let's get on with it. I'm going to share the presentation screen for that. Let me do that and share the PowerPoint again. Okay, so just bear with me for a bit. Okay, so I'm going to go through actually the presentation that's the same. The presentation deck is going to be the same like the one shared by Dr. Farah yesterday. But since this is a PowerPoint view that I'm sharing, you can actually navigate the screen by yourself. But I'm going to go through it at my pace. Okay, so of course, for e-learning help and support in UM, now we have a few more staff, lecturers also to help. So on the 9th of October, which is next Friday, it's going to be Dr. Yazid from Faculty of Engineering, and then followed by on the 23rd of October from 9:30 to 12:30 by Dr. Danny Adams and myself on the 30th of October. So that is the clinic slots, and hope you can actually join us in one of the sessions. Um, of course, just now, Ms. Belinda was saying that we will want to hear feedback from you on the online teaching and learning guideline. So this is the link. She will share the actual link in the chat box a little bit later. Okay, so let's continue with this document that we are going to share. It's available in the link that I've given. It's actually in our website. Okay, so I'm going to go through the essence of the guideline, I would say, so that then we can have a larger overview of what it means and also how it can help you teach this semester. So in the guideline that we shared, we essentially discuss three aspects of online teaching and learning, which is the design, which we think that that needs to be done, and this is the opportunity that we have for this semester, as compared to the opportunity that we get the previous semester, because the previous semester what we essentially did was we go into emergency remote teaching. But this semester, since we start with the online class right away, uh, we are actually designing the learning experience from day one until the end of the semester, which I would say exciting, because we can plan everything for the students from day one. Okay, so the design part is one that is, I think, we need to take the challenge and to take the opportunity to do properly, so that then we can have a good delivery for the students, both in synchronous and asynchronous session. And of course, how do we show our presence in the classes and online engagement. And lastly, the assessment. How do we design assessment, summative, formative, and also attentive assessment. Okay, so let's move on to the first one, which is design. So of course, when we talk about design, so we go into how do we design and how do we structure the resources, and also structure the assessment to what we essentially did in UM, based on all the QMAC documents that we did. This is actually for the purpose of constructive alignments, meaning that we need to have the learning outcomes and cater and also map the learning outcomes to our assessment, so that they can inform our learning activities and learning practice. So this is what I would think all of us would have been used to for many years, doing constructive alignment. So how do we, for example, apply a theory, or to do all the learning outcomes verbs that we use in the Bloom's taxonomy, so that then from the verbs in the taxonomy, that we can design an assessment for capturing students' ability to, or to be able to do to apply the theory of air traffic management, for example, in this situation, so that then they can apply that in the assessment. And of course, after we've concluded and after we've known that what is the learning outcomes and how we are going to assess the learning outcomes, then we can start designing the learning activities and learning experiences of the students, so that then they can achieve the outcomes that we intended. Okay, so please don't take the controls from me. You can actually move the slides in your view, but then you cannot. Please don't take the assessment, take the controls from my side. Okay, so when we do the design of the courses for the students, I can hear feedback. I think somebody turn on their mics. Can you please turn off your mic so that then it will not be you not have double audio. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so when we do the design for the learning outcomes and also uh, the learning for the students next year, in the SLT forms that I showed in front of you here, please make sure that you don't you avoid by as much as possible changes from the approved as CLO. Okay, so the CLO cost learning outcomes, normally we have either 3 or 4 cost learning outcomes. We need to make sure that as much as possible we don't change it. If you need to change it for any reason, probably the learning outcomes cannot be um, achieved using online learning strategies, then you need to actually go to the Senate to have it changed. So and the Senate will need to approve the changes. I think looking at some of the learning outcomes that we have in the universities, I'm not anticipating that there will be a lot of requests to the Senate to change the learning outcome, and I hope it doesn't have to go into that one. So that's the first message that we have in the guidelines anyway, because we don't want to see you need to change the learning outcome so that then it becomes an extra work for the program to have it done. Okay, so of course our official learning platform is still Spectrum, and so for KPI purposes, you have the minimum requirement which is still there. But at the same time, you can actually use several other platforms like Google Meet or this one, Microsoft Teams. Okay, so for changes in student learning time, so remember, so this one is just the the SLT or the borang tiga, what we normally say. You can actually change the SLT to make sure that the learning time can be accounted for the the next borang, which is the SLT form. So what we wanted is that we would suggest that a high percentage of the SLT is allocated for self-learning. But when we say self-learning, you need to make sure that the self-learning for the students doesn't mean that we don't give them anything to learn from. So you need to design activities within the SLT form and within our Spectrum pages, so that then there are enough materials for the students to do their self-learning. Okay. Another one is extra time. We need to designate for non-to-face activities so that the CLO can be achieved. And we should actually reflect and update the SLT in the SLT form. And this is for you to plan your teaching activities. So to help you to plan your teaching activities, we created this appendix in the guideline for teaching and learning, appendix 1, which tells you and help you to plan the SLT for, especially for the student self-learning. So what would be the activity and how we put in the students' preparation time for those activities itself. So when we talk about courses, we need to remember that, especially for SLTs, we don't want to burden students with never-ending assignments, because what we found out from feedback from last semester, some courses became too heavy for the students when they know, when the lecturers realize that they will not be able to see the students. Suddenly the workload for the students double. We need to remember that other than us teaching, there will be other friends of us also teaching. So if the students, for example, take 5 or 6 or 7 courses, there will be 5 or 6 or 7 other lecturers that they will have to contend with, and these lecturers will also give assignments and give coursework and give projects to the students to do. So uh, as a program, I would suggest that everybody look at their colleagues next to them, ask them how many coursework are you giving this second year student or this third year student, so that then they will be able to also manage their workloads for the lecturers and also for the students. Of course, when we talk about workload, make sure that the number and the complexity of the task that is given to the student aligns with the course credit load and also student learning time, because uh, otherwise the students will be having to sit for 6 or 8 hours in front of the computer, and at the end of the day they will need to uh, uh, allocate more time to do coursework and do projects. And because of the COVID-19 situation, it might not be as straightforward for the students compared to us, because sometimes we may live in a seemingly good internet connected places, but then there will be students who will struggle with internet connectivity. So please bear that in mind. I would suggest that you need to poll your students and ask them who has internet connection, who has bad internet connection, what can you do in the um, what can you do with regards to internet connectivity? Can you download videos, for example? Were you able to retrieve all the resources that you presented or you given in Spectrum? So you need to have that conversation with your students to make sure that they will be able to be on top of the workload that you are going to give them. Okay, so that is the design part. So I think we can have a little break here, and if you have any questions, feel free to either just raise your hand and talk, or if you are shy, then you can type the question. So I'll give you a chance to do that. Okay, if there's no question, then we can move on. Okay, so let's go on the delivery. So maybe we can discuss this a little bit more. If you do have anything that you want to add, or if you want to ask, just raise your hand or just speak, so that then we can have if we can help you, then we can help you. Okay, so for delivery, when we talk about delivery for the students, there are two ways of deliveries that we need to think about. The first one is synchronous delivery, which is the real-time delivery uh, for the students and the lecturers. So that means you are meeting them using, for example, this platform, which is uh, Teams. Other than that, it can be Google Meet, or if you have Zoom, for example, then you can also use Zoom for delivery. Um, you can also have a delivery using, for example, um, a Facebook Live or uh, YouTube Live. So that will be another way for you to discuss, or for you to engage with your students. Other than that, I remember that we have a webinar by Dr. Amira, who presented how to use WhatsApp and Telegram to do synchronous engagement with the students. So there are many ways for you to actually do synchronous delivery of the students. So we would suggest and we will really encourage you to do synchronous uh, synchronous sessions with the students at the very least 3 times in this semester. The first one in the beginning of the semester to get to know your students and to get to hear feedback from them. What are the concerns? What are the challenges that they have, or uh, what are the best way to move forward this semester. The second one, I would suggest that we do synchronous session, face-to-face online session in the middle of the semester, and also before the end of the semester, prior to uh, their final assessment, whether that can be an alternative assessment of any kind, or if uh, there is like a requirement from the board or from the professional bodies or accreditation bodies, you need to have an exam. Then, of course, before the end of the semester, you need to actually have feedback from the students to see and to hear from them what are their concerns regarding an online exam. And of course, synchronous, we don't put in the maximum for the synchronous session, uh, but we would suggest that again, if you want to do synchronous real-time webinar session like this, you need to make sure that uh, as much as possible you cater, especially for students with low bandwidth. So because sometimes we were happily talking, giving lecture online, but then we don't we don't remember that there are students who with like poor internet access, and they can't really hear our delivery, for example. So we would suggest that we need to make sure that in the synchronous session, please record the session. In Teams, you can record the session. Again, as I showed you before, in the more action button on the 3 dots more action button, you can actually scroll down and find that there is a recording button that you can do. Okay. Um, uh, Going back to the delivery, the second part of delivery is asynchronous. So what makes asynchronous different than synchronous is the asynchronous delivery is not done real time, but the students will still be able to access learning materials. So when you record your lecture session and put the link in our spectrum, then it becomes an asynchronous. So the advantage for that is that then the students will be able to pause and rewind and replay and move forward in the recording, so that then they would be able to uh, understand your lessons much better. And I would say that that would be an advantage for the students in areas where they don't really have good internet connections, because they will be able to listen to the lecture again in their spectrum. Apart from a lecture recording, asynchronous can be many things. It can be, for example, it can be uh, resources or reading materials that you created for the students. It can also be a lesson module in Spectrum that you've created, or it can be um, uh, an interactive video that you recorded very early on, that you put in the recorded video, you put in or inter interspersed in the video with assessment questions to make sure that the students are learning from the videos that you put in. Another idea for asynchronous session that we have, that uh, there are online learning platforms that's available online, places like Future Learn or Open Learning or Coursera and EDX. Those are courses by big name universities, places like Stanford, MIT, Harvard, um, Cambridge, and Oxford, and Southampton. So those universities actually provided or developed courses uh, as part of their learning or as part of their university courses in an online learning. So you use these MOOC platforms to uh, to make sure that the students have engagement, not just by with you as the lecturer, but by other lecturers and other learners from different countries. I think that would be something that's really beneficial for the students, for their learning experience, because they will be able to engage with other learners from different countries within um, the courses that they have. So I would suggest that you explore some of these MOOC courses that may relate to your courses. Remember, these are universities, so they will be teaching mostly the same thing as what you are teaching. Just make sure that the students will be able to um, record and gather the recording, and also gather the learning from those MOOC platforms. And from the MOOC platforms, what you can do is you let the students loose on the MOOC platform that they are learning from. Of course, you will need to go in and look at the MOOC platform yourself as a lecturer, so that then you know that the learning outcome will be similar to yours. And you can create assessment questions from the learning that they have in the MOOC platform. So that would be a good idea to use how to use MOOC platforms as part of your teaching strategy and also learning strategies for the students. So synchronous and asynchronous will be able to then uh, give the students a better and a richer learning experience for them for this semester. Um, all right, so that is synchronous and asynchronous deliveries. Of course, the asynchronous, there is no maximum, same like synchronous, but look at the needs of the students, look at the students' ability to access the sessions, and actually, for the asynchronous delivery, what we found when we polled students last semester is that they need a mixture of both. So some of the students say they prefer synchronous, some of the students say they prefer asynchronous, but when we analyze the data, it's actually split down the middle 50-50. So I would suggest that you have both ways. That means you do synchronous sessions with the student, but at the same time, you give them the asynchronous resources for the students. For example, would be um, you do like the first week you do asynchronous, and then week 2 to week 5 you do the asynchronous session, and then you have like one or two more synchronous in the middle of the semester, so that you can get the feedback on the learning materials that you did in the uh, asynchronous session, so that then you can then create the new ones for the remaining weeks. And remember that the students want not just uh, your slides, but they also want to pick your brain. So make sure that you have a session where you will have interaction with them using synchronous delivery aspect as well. Okay, so that's for delivery. Okay, so there are quite a number of comments here. Let me make sure go through them. Okay, I have somebody's asking or raising their hand. Dr. Kano, do
Yes.
you have a question? Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon.
Waalaikumsalam.
This one is regarding the delivery slide just now.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say we follow the module of synchronize here. Okay. Minimum only three
Okay.
times per semester. Okay. Could you advise how do we want to monitor? I mean, for the attendance, student attendance.
Okay. All right. So for the attendance, if you go into the document that we share, if you click on, let me try to put it up so that I can link you the synchronous recording participant. So if you go to page 8, let me share the screen so that then we can look at it together. Okay, so recording participation in online class. Okay, so there are a few ways that we suggest that you record the attendance. Okay, the first one is you can use uh, okay. The first one that I would suggest is you can create the spectrum attendance module. So it allows the student to record their. There's the QR code, spectrum QR code module in Spectrum. So you can
Yeah.
actually, let me open Spectrum so that then you can see how it looks like. So for our courses, can you see my Spectrum now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for example, for our courses, just open any of the courses that's available here. Okay. So for the courses, so I have this attendance already, but what you can do is if you don't have this attendance module here, you go to the top left hand side and you click on add a block. From there, you'll be able to find the QR code attendance somewhere between the private files and random grocery entry. But since I already have the module up, it will not appear here. So once you click on that QR code attendance, you will given this link, and also you will also be able to see this thing, QR code attendance. So what you do is when you set up the attendance, click on the edit settings. So you click on the edit settings, and for the oops, sorry, no, not edit settings, sorry. So click on attendance. So let me go back to the front screen. Okay, so click on the attendance. Okay, click on add session. Okay, so you create the sessions for the student, but by default, this box is unchecked. So for next semester, what you can do is you can just check this box. Allow students to record their own attendance. So what they will do is when they log in, and they will be able to click on the attendance and click and check their own attendance. So of course you need to set the date and the time, and you need to remind the students that they must register or record their attendance during within the time range that we give. So for example, the class starts at 9 to 11 o'clock. So within 9 and 11 is when they can record their attendance. So when you click on add, so we created the session. So what you do then during during the class, what they will do is they will be able to just go and click on their attendance. So for example, let me change this, switch over to students to see whether I can do that. So click on attendance, and the students will be able to click. So this one is all the classes from the past, so I will not be able, but the students will be able to click on their attendance here. So that is for recording. So that is recording attendance. But I don't really suggest that you record attendance like this. And the reason why I say that is because when you do that, it's just what I would call anti-attendance. I would suggest better if you use attendance part of the student submission. So if you look at this one, point number 5, using the electronic timestamps of students' online activities, use that as attendance. So what we do is actually we create assessment to make sure that we gather students' understanding of our lessons, and at the same time get them to submit assignment or participate or do chat or reply to messages. And that, I think, is a more meaningful way of taking attendance, because apart from taking attendance, you know that students are actually paying attention in your class. So that is something that I would really suggest that you do, instead of, well, if you can take the attendance the old way, I would say, but taking attendance using students' submission is much better for you.
Okay,
So we have a
Zahir.
question. Yes.
But Zahir, I
Yeah.
also prefer that methods. But the problem is at the end at the semester, we need to show to the faculty, okay, that this time, okay, yes, we have we run the class, and then we need to show, the attendance list,
Mhm.
especially for here, for example, is in asynchronous, which is not in the real time.
Yes.
So that is the,
Yes, I know that is part of the challenge. But normally, when you have uh, activities, it will be recorded somewhere. So, for example, if you use a forum, so the forum logs, the time of the forum log will be the attendance, and it will tell you what time the students reply to the messages. Uh, Similarly with submission of assignment or small assessment quiz that you have, the asynchronous session, so that becomes an attendance. And in like the quiz, you can actually set what is the date and what is the time that is the deadline for students assessment or student to submit their work. So that becomes an assessment for you, and also at the same time attendance for the students. I have the question quite similar to this from Dr. Wan Aliza, which is, do we have to take attendance? Is it compulsory? So I would say the compulsoriness of attendance it depends on whether you are going to be audited, isn't it? So uh, of course, you need to take some form of attendance to make sure that the students are counted for. And remember, especially for part-time lecturers, so some of you may be coordinating courses where you have part-time lecturers. So they will need to have attendance so that then they can get paid. So that is something that you need to also do. And for that purpose, probably taking attendance using the Spectrum attendance module is a good idea for that. Number 2, you can actually download the attendance list when using Teams. So as the person who organizes online classes in Teams, you have the option to actually download attendance. So that will be the, the now desktop version of Teams change layout. So there will be places where you can actually get the attendance. So I'm not the I'm not the originator organizer for this one, so I can't really download attendance. So let me show you the screen so that then you'll be able to see what I mean. Okay. Okay. So if you can you see my screen now? So if you are um, handling classes or creating online classes, there will be like extra buttons here because I'm not the organizer. Our staff at edX is the organizer, so I don't see the buttons here. So at the top here, there will be three dots buttons, similar like the more action button at the top here, and there will be option for you to actually download attendance for this one if you use Teams. Yes, of course. Attendance for international students because they will need the attendance for extending visa. Thank you, Dr. Shiba. What if the class size is huge, more than 120? I mean, there are several strategies that you can use to take attendance, and probably in like large classes, maybe you would need to use the more straightforward way of using the uh, attendance module or downloading the attendance list, other than getting using the electronic timestamp or students' activities from their participation. Of course, I can imagine that if you have 200 students and you ask all 200 students to reply to forums so that then you can take attendance, that will be a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Okay, so let's continue. Any other question? Other than that, okay. Yes.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute.
Okay. I can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, okay. Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes, I can. All right.
Okay, so I'm Chome, a part-time lecturer. So if I have guest lecturers giving a lecture, how would I capture the student attendance if it's not delivered from Microsoft Teams?
Okay. So if your part-time lecturer don't use Microsoft Teams, then you will need to have a different strategy of taking attendance. I think if you are able to access Spectrum, then you can use the
Yes, I'm
Spectrum
able to,
attendance.
but I often have, if I'm able to, as a part-time lecturer, it's just that sometimes I have guest lecturers.
Okay. Okay.
I'm with a lot of faculty, so they're lawyers and they're speaking, delivering lecture from their office. So I'm just wondering, how do I capture my students' attendance? Because I would need that to claim, right?
Yes. Well, I would think that if you have a small class, then you can screen capture the students, or you can screen capture the attendance list or the participants list from Zoom or from Teams. That is, I think, another way for you to do that. But I think if you need to, if you have to use Google Form, for example, so you can go ahead and use the Google Form for taking
The list.
attendance.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So I have this question again from Dr. Rama. Can I use attendance is downloaded from Teams? Okay, yeah, of course. When you do attendance list from Teams, I think at my level, or at what I think is that although it will show this person joined and at what time, and then this person left at one time, it doesn't really matter because attended the session. So it might be very long, of course, but you can actually also filter the because it's in Excel, isn't it? So you can filter the attendance to make sure that only the topmost the topmost attendance or the topmost names appear. Can we get the recorded video? Of course, you can get the recorded video for this session. Is it must to use Teams? it's what we suggested because we have accounts in Teams, and also we have also accounts in Google, because UMail uses Google. So that is what we would suggest for you to use. It's not compulsory if you have other platforms that you think is better suited for your style of teaching. Then go ahead and use that. But make sure that you have a record of what's going on in those platforms, so that then you will be able to uh, uh, use that for the audits. Is it compulsory for a teaching lesson to be recorded? I would not say it would be compulsory, but my my rationale is this: if you already have done the teaching lessons with the students, or if you are doing teaching lessons with the student, it will be just a click of a button to have it recorded, and then another few clicks of the button to have it shared with your students in Spectrum. So why not doing that? Why not do that? Okay, so uh, so this is a question by Dr. Rama again. So invited as a guest. So what's the difference between guest and member? The guest will not be able to download the attendance because you don't have the even you will not be able to originate or organize the lessons. So you will need to have the help of your coordinator, the course coordinator, to download the attendance if you use attendance. Other than that, it doesn't really make any difference between guest and member. Yes, Dr. Johannes, you raised your hand. Dr. Johannes, do you have anything to ask?
My microphone is muted.
Okay, okay, yes. Now your microphone is not muted. So let me unmute your microphone. Can I unmute you? I cannot unmute your microphone. Yeah, so now you can speak. Dr. Yanis?
Okay, all right. Okay, it's just a suggestions. This is from the webinars that I attended, organized by EDEC. Actually, for guest lecturers, you can actually use Slido. Slido is a live poll that you send the code to your participant, which is your student, and just ask them to actually write down their name. And you can actually see the responses on the desktop when you have it. I think that can be done as part of if you have guest lecturer and they don't have what you call it, access to Spectrum, maybe they can use Slido. Just be creative about it, I think.
Okay,
Just a
thank you very
suggestion.
much.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. If you don't mind typing the link to Slido in the chat box, it would be great. Okay, so let's continue. I actually have less than 10, well, we have 10 minutes now to finish. So let me open the slide again. Where's the slide again? Okay, let's move to slide number. Where was it? Okay, so delivery assessment. Okay, all right. So we would like to actually focus a little bit more on assessment because what we found last semester is that a lot of faculties are still resorting back to online exam when they do their assessment. Okay, we understand that if you are bound by the requirements of your accreditation bodies, professional boards, that the, the courses need to have assessment every semester, then you need to do assessment. But I would think that reading through a few of the board requirements, they are looking for assessment throughout the courses of the study. So, for example, I don't remember which one I read before. They want minimum of 50% of assessment have to be an exam based. Okay, so taking into account that we only have so normally the program is is done over 8 semesters, okay, or 7 semesters. Then we only have done 2 semesters on online learning. So you can actually still achieve that 50% exam component uh, from the, oops, somebody shared their screen. So let me, somebody shared a screen with us. So let me share mine back again. Sorry. Please don't share your screen for the time being, so that I can continue the presentation. Okay, so let me get back to that that discussion just now. So, for example, you have a 7 semester study for the whole of the program, and now we are in MCO or online learning for only 2 semesters. So one last previous semester and the one in the coming semester. So there will still be ways for you to get the requirement of 50% assessment from the future semesters on, and also taking into account the previous semesters for giving exams to the students. So I would suggest that you try to adjust the program so that then you can still get 50% exam, but from the next semesters, so that then you can get that 50% content. Okay, so I'm having problem displaying the slides. I don't know why. Okay, so let me share my screen instead, so that then it will work. So let me use a different pin number 2. Okay, this one. Okay, so screen number 2. Okay, so let's move on to the assessment, okay, the assessment part. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, so when we do assessment, so did you get the what I meant by trying to play around or adjust your program to get that 50% exam component from previous and also future semesters. So, and you have to then readjust the assessment without exam in the semester that we have to do online teaching. So I think that's another strategy that you can employ for this time. Okay, so so we have somebody raising their hand, which so that is Dr. Yohanes. So probably if is it that you wanted to ask something? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so for the assessment that we have for this e-learning online, there is actually quite a number of different alternative assessments that you can employ to get the student to assess the students on their learning outcome. So in the guideline, we've shared a few alternative assessment method, both on the formative or continuous side. and also on the summative side. So it can be a case study, it can be a online quiz, can be short videos, it can be a report, it can be summative assessments like order presentation. It can be a drawing as a formative assessment. It can be a debate. So there are various methods that you can employ, both on the formative and also the summative part. And there are multiple dimensions of assessment that you can do. It can be a self-assessment, the design assessment that students do their assessment based on rubrics, self-assess. It can be a peer-based assessment. It can be a performance portfolio-based assessment. So those are the kinds of dimensions that you can actually uh, design for the students, so that then you answer the question or the requirements of the learning outcomes. So of course, educational technologies or people from education would know this. Why do we conduct assessment? Isn't it? It's for the students to know how well they are doing in the learning process. So that would be a form of formative assessment that we can design. For us as the lecturers to reflect on and also improve our practices, and also for the department or the program to refine the curriculum or for the program as well. Uh, when we talk about assessment, there are many ways to do assessment, uh, but we would like to take the discussion about formative and summative assessment. So formative assessment occurs before or during instruction. It is assessment for learning normally, and as learning. It normally comes in a descriptive way, the feedback way. It can be formal and informal, and that is compared to the summative assessment. So assessment that comes after instruction. So in the midst of doing our teaching during COVID-19, what we were thinking or what we were suggesting is that once you've passed, for example, with 12 of the semester, you can start actually giving the students the summative assessment. And it doesn't have to be an exam form. It can be an alternative assessment that you've created and you designed for the students based on the different framework and the different methods that we shared in the guideline as well. So, for example, taking away the exam for the students, then you can get them to do either a poster or you can help them to do skills demonstration, or you can have them to record a portfolio of work based on the whole of the CLO of the course. Because normally when we do summative assessment, it is a combination of different CLO, isn't it? Uh, and that sometimes is different than formative, where we test only one or two CLO. So when you sort of when you have get to the point that you have looked at or you have teach them multiple CLO, then you can start thinking about giving them a summative assessment in an alternative forms. Of course, it can be, but the thing is, what it does is it evaluates the students' ability to do certain cognitive skills or psychomotor skills or affective skills that you've given them throughout the semester. So that is how we differentiate between formative and summative assessment, and that is how you can actually design the summative assessment for the students. So again, when you talk about giving assessment for the students, it is actually a process of feedback to their learning, and also it can be a sort of feedback to us as the lecturers, and on how the learning can be more effective, not just for them as the learners, but also for the seniors, or for the juniors later as the future learners, because you've actually learned from the challenges that you had during teaching them. So when you look at, so this is alternative assessments. We are proposing that you try and focus and design alternative assessment to replace your final exams, because as you know, when you talk about final exams online, then it comes with different challenges. Students, there are last semester there are cases of students trying to cheat. There are many ways for them to try to sort of beat the system and try to manipulate assessment. So or manipulate online exams. So that's why we suggest that you turn to alternative assessment or authentic assessment, so that then you measure the things that matters most to the students. And normally, when you think about it really deeply, it's not based on exams. It is always based on, for example, the ability of the students, or the competency of the students doing certain things that you want them to demonstrate in the LO. And frankly, exam is not how you measure those competencies. Okay, so when you do alternative assessments, so these are sourced from different resources that we have. So traditional assessment, or the old ways of doing assessment, is only one shot test. The students cannot actually learn from that. Compared to alternative assessment, is normally continuous and longitudinal assessments. It's based on, for example, feedback provided by learners. There are cases in last semester in Alam Bina, my department. Our lecturers conducted an alternative assessment using interviews with the students to replace their final exam. And from the feedback that they had from the students and also from the lecturers, it went really well, and the students liked it. And the lecturers, although it's a little bit challenging for them, but they find that that is the best way for them to assess student learning outcome. So we are getting to the last few slides. So, this we discussed this just now. The self-assessment. How do we do a self-assessment? There are different dimensions to it. It's either be a self-assessment, that's assess students' own ability based on a rubric. It can be a peer assessment where we get students to assess each others. Okay, and then we can do a form assessment, which is performance based. The students' competency to do certain things that we prescribe in the learning outcomes. Of course, group-based assessment is something that we have done many times before with our group assignments. Okay, and another good way to assess students is a portfolio-based assessment. So now students can collect the artifacts of their learning through online means. There are many blogging sites. There are many website, free and easy websites creators that the students can actually collect their learning artifacts. It can be a digital one, it can be a non-digital one. For example, we ask them to draw a picture based on the chemical processes that they've learned. So that becomes a portfolio of their work that they can share with you over the rest of the semester, or over the length of the semester. So a portfolio-based assessment can be, for example, you ask them to create a website at the beginning of the semester, and for them to collect their assessment or their classes activities in this website, and for them to submit this at the end of the semester, becomes a portfolio of their learning, and that can be a mark for the students. Okay. So when you update your course information for the students, make sure that you do it in the course current information form, and you detail the weightage for the latest way or the new way for you to do online teaching in this penilaian berterusan, and also but you change the peperiksaan akhir to something else. So that would be your alternative assessment method. So so like this one, although it still says final exam, but it's actually a case study report and also take home exam. Okay, so that is how you design the learning for the students to cater for the contingency that we have to do during the COVID-19 season. Um, Okay, so so this is something that I've talked about just now. So how do we then create or design the formative assessment, the summative assessment? When does it happen, and also the alternative assessment? Of course, when you do alternative assessment, you need to constructively align it to the CLO. So the to be there. Same like when you do final exam, you should actually discuss this with the program coordinators or a vetting committee, so that then they are aware of how you assessing the students and make sure that the program can still pass the required accreditation bodies, especially if the accreditation bodies requires exam component in the course. Of course, so before the end of the session, so I'm going to the rest of the last of the video right now, the screen now. So you can get more resources in our website, and also the campaign that we're still running, UM Teach Online campaign. You have the guidelines on the readings, you have the videos, you have the infographics. Of course, in the website, you also have our blogs, our blog posts that touches quite a number of issues on how we do things. I would suggest that you take the time to read there are quite frequent posting on guides to do a number of things, to how to create quizzes, how to do assessment, how to do a lot of things in Spectrum. Just now, a few days back, we started to discuss turn it in. Okay, and I'm going to post another post on turn it in, on how to actually create turn it in assessment on Spectrum. So lastly, I'm actually 10 minutes overdue. So could you please give feedback to our session, our seminar, but at the same time, so while we wait for you to fill up the feedback form, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Uh, okay. Okay, so there are a number of questions about the vetting for the final exam, also for the assessment. So I would say that so this is Dr. Ushirani and also Dr. Wong. Normally, so in my faculty, all the final exam components will need to be vetted. Okay, so what we do is, instead of vetting a final exam question, what we did last semester, we vetted the replacement of final exam with alternative assessment. So each of the faculty members who created alternative assessment, we give our proposal to the we show our proposal to the vetting or to the program owner and program committee to make sure that they understand what we are trying to do, and for them to be able to agree with, okay, so yes, we will allow you to do this alternative assessment because it will capture the LO correctly with and it will be able to comfortably replace the final exam. So if I know, because I know that some programs don't have a vetting committee, so you can create a program committee to sit down and go through the proposal, final assessment or alternative assessment, so that then you have this minuted, and then you will be able to give this back to uh, the program owners. And so, is the approval from vetting committee compulsory? I would not put it as compulsory because I don't have the question. I don't have the right answer for that. That would need some. You need to ask. I think you need to ask QMAC on that, whether it's compulsory on that or not. As far as our concern is, we would really suggest that you get approval from a vetting committee. But of course, it depends on the program owners, and it will depend on your faculty practices. How is the faculty practicing the final assessment? Because of course, when you do changes to the program, you need to have approval from somewhere, isn't it? Uh, as because the program belongs to because the cost belongs to the program. So you want to change the cost, the component of the cost, that you would need to get approval from the program. So some sort of a discussion at the program level will, I think, be useful in this regard.
Dr. Zahiruddin,
Yes.
Sarah from QMAC.
Yes.
Okay, the vetting committee approval is necessary as we are following the standard procedure of current practice. Memang kena ada vetting committee. So that one kita tak compromise lah. We will still follow that procedure. So the approval is a compulsory for everyone.
Okay, thank you for the answer. There's a follow-up question. Is there a timeline for the vetting committee approval?
Can I answer for you, Dr. Zahir?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This is Kiran here from QMAC. Okay, I would just like to clarify a few things here. I think that, number one, for all programs, we have actually advised that the forms which are going to be amended, Form 3, 4, 6, because of the changes done to the teaching schedule and the exam, these forms should be brought to Jawatankuasa, either department or faculty, for approval. So lecturers will need to turn their courses into online and amend the forms, including alternative assessment for examination. So those should be brought before the semester start. Faculty should approve those. And then
semester is starting next week.
Exactly, right. Yeah, what we assume is all this would have already been done at faculty level, because when we lasted out the GP for teaching and learning, actually it's quite clear in that GP. All right, but even though it has not been done, I think within the first few weeks, faculty will have to do that. Because all program coordinators have to make sure that lecturers have updated this form so that the online teaching learning schedule is ready. So the first week, you are giving the students their teaching schedule with very clear instructions of all the assessments that are going to be done. Okay, and number two, as for the alternative assessment for exam, I think just like before, akan ada jadual. You know, when we used to have the jadual from ASC will be giving us hopefully a jadual where there will be a timeline, penyediaan soalan peperiksaan, and then vetting. So we will have something like that again. So the faculty can tentukan when they want to do a vetting. Vetting is compulsory.
So instead of final exam, it will be a vetting for alternative assessment.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kiran, for that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there
Just
is-
would like to check. Last semester, it was between week 10 to week 14. The assessment for final exam component, if it's not done as a final exam during the exam week, is it the same for this semester?
Well, I would say that because last week we had to do emergency remote teaching, so there will be like more time for last semester. But for this semester, it needs to come earlier, as what Dr. Kiran was suggesting just now. Yes, Prof. Kamila.
No, I mean, sorry. You see, there's two assessment component. One is the final exam component, maybe 40%, maybe 60%. What I'm asking is, if we are going not to use the final exam week and we want to do the alternative assessment during the 14 weeks, the last previous, I just want to know about the timeline, whether that time it was actually scheduled that we could do alternative assessments during week 10 to week 14 for final exam component. I mean, so it's spread out, so it doesn't clash. There's no clashes. I mean, with many subjects students are taking. So I just want to know whether there is that requirement, is it still there or is left basically not there yet, left to the faculty to decide?
Okay, thank you for the question. Let's hear from Prof. Kamila.
Hello, everybody. Good to see all of you participating and listening to Dr. Zahir. This has been a very illuminating session, and I'm following your questions as well. You have very wonderful questions to ask and very useful questions. Well, basically, we would like to have as few traditional final exam as possible. If you were to look at the semester schedule, you know that there will be only 3 weeks of final exam, and there is no revision week. So as much as possible, we would like everybody to plan for alternative assessments. So Dr. Zahir has already pointed out there's a difference between summative and formative exams. So for all kinds of assessments, especially if there has to be vetting. That's what Dr. Kiran has already cleared. But some programs, the final in some form or another because of the professional accreditation. But then we would like to, impact as little as possible to have the final exam. Continuous assessment is best, and you would have between summative and formative. So if you could plan it out that way so that students will not be so heavily burdened, towards the end of the semester, which last year. So we 2-3 hour exams online, because definitely that's not the same as sitting for a pen and paper exam in the exam hall. So try to, that's something to be avoided. Okay?
Okay, thank you. So the question by Dr. Sharani is actually when is the last date for the vetting?
Yeah. So I would assume that is more lines of the traditional form of the vetting exam, the vetting dates as how we would conduct the traditional exams, right? And there's a very cute dog somebody has in the background. But anyway, as was pointed out earlier, I think it was Dr. Kiran, usually AASC would come up with a schedule, with a vetting schedule. So that's something that I don't think AASC is in this group. So that's something that we will have to sort out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
That is, of course, that is only for those very, very minimal number of exams that people plan to conduct.
Any more questions from the participants? So Dr. Amirul was saying that in his faculty, the vetting is done in week 4, and those with traditional final exam vetting in week 7. So I think we will need to wait for the latest schedule by ASC for this, whether they will allow us to do something quite late from at the the alternative assessment as far as alternative assessment is concerned. But I would think that week 4 is a good time for everybody to firm up their assessment methods and assessment regimes for this semester, because we are starting from fresh, not because of not in an emergency mode. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Usharani. So any
Thank you, Dr. Zahir.
okay, so if there is no more questions in the chat and also in the from the floor, I would remind you to please click on the feedback form link that we have and give feedback for this session. So I do apologize for any technical hiccups, or if my voice becomes like robot or deleted or whatever. So we will have a recording of this session for you to take home, and also for you to hear it again. So thank you very much, and I bring this session to a close, and I return it to our moderator, Miss Linda.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zahir, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. So if your question is not being answered, or if you have more questions, in the feedback inquiries form, there's a section where you can post your inquiries, and we will try to get back to you, contact you via email or any preferred contact that you want us to reach you. So thank you very much. We will share the slide with you via email, and also the link to this recorded session. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Terima kasih semua.
Terima kasih.